is Robin Ayoub from the Localization Fireside Chat, your favorite podcaster in the localization world. I am honored to have with me Bernie Franzgrote, right? So did I get it right? Franzgrote?
That's not bad. That's
Yeah?
good. It'll
People
do.
done worse than me? Tell me I'm not the...
Oh no, it's not bad. You almost have the Germanic version of it. It's Franzgrote anglicized, and if you're doing it Germanically, it's Franzgrote.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Franzgrote, okay. Well,
Bernie's the easier part. It's a good Irish last name.
well, Bernie's good. I like the name Bernie. It's very easy to pronounce. I don't have to do the verbal gymnastic with it. That's great.
Yeah, no
Um,
problem. I hear you. I hear you.
I just wanted to also say to my audience that Bernie is a well-known name in the world here in Canada. He's located in Ottawa, and him and we've talked quite often. Actually, we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary since we did the first podcast on the knack for business, which was well received by everybody. I got a lot of good comments on it. A lot of where I told my first time ever, my personal story, how I got here, and Bernie and Wayne were so gracious, and they hosted me on that podcast. There was some articles written about it too on the company I used to work for website. I want to thank you for that. That was great. And also, you hosted me on another virtual networking, East Trade Wind, last week or the week before, and
Yeah,
which is goes to show how many ways you're involved in supporting people. And I couldn't wait to get together with you today to talk about that. So before we get started in all the details, as we say on this channel, Bernie, everybody's got a story. Let's start with that. What's your
fair
story?
enough. Well, you want me to go back from the womb, or do you want me to pick something a little more recent?
The floor is yours, my friend.
Okay, I won't do the womb story because that's vague memories. 36 years in healthcare. 20 of it in business development. Retired December 2018. 2019 was a year of discovery of networking, and a lot of what I did back in the business development side was look for opportunities, and not in a dark way, but in hey, someone has a need, let's fill the need. And so it kind of evolved, and chatting people up, because that's how you find out, right? If you don't have a built-in structure for feedback loops. So in 2019, started Kreativ Insight. And Kreativ Insight is kind of the roost, and Knack for Business feeds from that. So Kreativ Insight, I talk to people. I find out what they do, what they're looking for, and sometimes when I talk to other people, it's almost like there's a mesh. There's a kind of a crossover. You can see that there's an opportunity for someone to help another, or the other way around, or you're both looking for the same audience. In which case, together two heads are better than one. As time progressed, 2020, pandemic, everybody has to do everything online. Zoom became your next best buddy. Between that and networking outside of the Ottawa Valley, so I'm visiting BC virtually, and then I'm visiting Scotland virtually, then South Africa, US, of course, and Australia. So you get around chatting with people. Unfortunately, I'm an Anglophone, so not being an Anglophone being unfortunate, but only being having a really good skill set in English and not in other languages. And so that's the only limiter. As time wore on, someone said, "Oh, by the way, you got to meet this buddy I know that's out of the Phoenix Business Exchange Network, which is a group here in Ottawa." And someone says, "Oh, you should meet this person. He may make a good co-host on a podcast." And that was through Carl Richards. And Carl's got a program where he kind of trains you up to do podcasts, etc., or he can do the whole thing for you. In other words, you talk and record, and he takes it in and then gussies it up. So Wayne and I started chatting, and next thing you know, we started the Knack for Business podcast, and that has been rolling forward. As time wears on, East Trade Winds comes into play. It's a networking group. It's every Tuesday, 8 to 9 Eastern, and free to attend. We have guests from all over the globe coming in to talk about different things. Sometimes these are people that are seasoned. Sometimes these are people just starting out, and it's kind of a mixed bag, and it's sharing of information. The Knack for Business podcast itself it's on a journey of talking to people about their journey. So origin story, not quite the womb part, but a little bit sooner. And then the some people have traveled some interesting roads, and they have golden nuggets and lessons learned. We're about almost 400 podcasts posted right now, and it's like a little mini MBA course. And so it has different sectors: lawyers, accountants, social media experts, coaches for the head, coaches for the body, coaches for your accounting, and on goes the story, right? And so it's a really wide cocoon or wide umbrella of content.
Now, listening to your story, it sort of reminds me of the how business used to be done a few years ago. I don't want to say a decade ago, but a few years ago, where people actually talk to people, and not expecting anything in return. They're just trying to find out who's the other person is. And as you mentioned in one of your statements, meshing those needs between the different people that you're talking to in the day of digital age that we're living right now, and you can use to your advantage bits and pieces of it, as obviously using podcast and a bunch of other things. You're hosting networking events outside the country. Now, how value it is still to talk face to face, in your opinion?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, here's another case in point. I'm involved in another location here in Ottawa called the Ad Hive. So it's a collab working space community, right? So I met with someone. It's location wise in the city. It's kind of central. So I met with somebody to do what they call a business activity meeting, a BAM, and that's part of the Phoenix group. So I'm chatting this guy up. He does HVAC, and I'm looking to have him come on as a guest on the podcast. Maybe acquire a fireplace. One of my needs is looking for a fireplace in the house. Ta-da! In the process of chatting, we're sitting there. And there's another gentleman who was in the bistro space, and I said, "Oh, by the way, Gamma, I meet Matt." And they go back and forth, and then Gamma says, "HVAC, do you do commercial or just residential?" Well, Gamma has a commercial need, right, with balancing. So some of these intros are self-attracting or self-sourcing. They only go, ta-da, a light bulb comes on and someone has a chat because there's a pain point that's coming up. So doing it face-to-face, you get the nuance, you get more of a sense of what's going on. The podcast is really good because we spend an hour with a person. And even if I've met them and done a podcast previously, having the second one sometimes you get nuances of, well, this is new. Whether there's been a career change or there's been an update or there's something has shifted. The focus is different. Well, that's cool to know. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting there afterwards and I'm going, well, let me introduce you to these couple of people because they can really help you and help boost what you're trying to do.
That's right. And it sounds to me like you've centered the activities around the podcast. You've used the podcast as a conversation starter, and to branch out of that. Is that
Yeah. Yeah, well,
fair to
it's
say?
easier even when I'm having a meeting. I'll have introductory meetings with people, even without the intent of a podcast.
Mhm.
And we'll start chatting back and forth, and I'm going, oh, you should meet this person because I think there's something to the story. It just, if the person is open and tell me more. So in other words, if they say I build widgets, that's nice. But then all of a sudden you hear a certain flavor. They're looking for someone to do specialized packaging. Well, I met someone that does specialized packaging. What are you looking for? I said, oh, well, this is perfect. Here's a crossover. Good example was in 2019 when I was doing the in-person meetings. Someone says we do clinical trials here. I'm looking at him and going, I don't know anybody playing Frankenstein. Bottom of 2019, I found someone that was playing Frankenstein. Not quite Frankenstein, but he wanted to do clinical trials here in Canada. Oddly enough, here's the introduction. So, sometimes it may not be the next day, But once you know what's in play and what the ask is for, you can start threading the connections through. The podcast just helps reinforce it, just keeps everything fresh.
100%. And you know what? As a fellow podcaster, I've seen, and I've started 2 years ago. Like you've known the story a little bit, but for the audience reminder, I started like 2023 toward mid-year. So uh, I didn't know. I thought first I was just doing it for the passion of conversation. To be honest with you, I love talking to people, and we were almost post COVID, but we still have that hang up from COVID. We don't see people face to face. So I was doing all this conversations at Starbucks, meeting people at Starbucks and having coffee with them and talking to them. And then I thought, why don't we put it like online and then see if we can do it online, and maybe record it. And so yeah, I started doing that, but I did not know the impact until later. Like I want to say 50, 60 episodes later, I started seeing the impact of it. When people would reach out to me and say, we've done the podcast with you, and based on that, we've realized an actual business gain that we did not have otherwise, which brings a lot of joy for me. I mean, I'm not doing this for to gain money out of it. At least not now. I'm trying to make it monetize it down the road, hopefully, but not now. I mean, I'm trying to figure out if this is helpful for somebody, right? And but that notion that somebody, it's so rewarding, and you just back to validate your point, it's so rewarding when somebody comes out to you and say, I done a podcast with you and it was positive. I've got something out of it and it was helpful.
At the end of the day, what I've found is that here's another example, or in regards to podcasting. So the property was a podcast. That's about commercial real estate and investing inside that space. So I work with a commercial realtor here in Ottawa. So actually, that was the first place I started podcasting, and that's where Carl connected, and then Carl then connected Wayne to me. So that's kind of like the trail. The podcast itself helps broadcast out to people outside your circle what's going on. Now the investment in real estate, here in Ontario is going to be different maybe than Quebec. But it's going to be different in the U.S. and it's in the U.S. is dependent on the state, etc. But the rules, the general overall points of concern are still the same. Like you got to get the money, you got to make sure everything is as it is, or as it's the bill of goods is real, all right? And then how much is the bill of goods going to keep it up and running, right, from a real estate perspective? So a lot of these things apply universally. I do have a highlight in my podcast going, hi, this is not your ultimate advice. Go seek local advice before you begin a venture, because that's up to you. This is to inform you that there's information out there, which is the next part of it. Is sometimes if you don't know what you don't know, this might be something you need to know. Right, and so that fills an information gap. I've talked to a lawyer out of Texas. He does wills and estates. It has nothing. He can't provide you legal advice here in the province of Ontario. Or that said, the structure of the ideas, the points to bring up as a business owner, for example, because the knack for business centers around the business space. Well, what do you have to have? Well, then you talk to your legal counsel here in Ontario, and all of a sudden, well, this is how it works here. All right, and then but you've already asked the question, as opposed to you're unknowing about something and you should have asked. At the sign on the road.
It sort of opened the door for you to learn, and not necessarily just in your backyard, globally, and see if those learnings can be applied here. That's where or vice versa, or if there's anything here that can be applied out there, right? Too, because I noticed like some of my podcasters too. They are not necessarily in the industry that I'm in. They're not necessarily in the same geographical area that I'm in. I'm like you, like some of my guests, they come from different parts of the world. And I was actually lining up my first podcast in Arabic. I'm going to do the entire episode in in Arabic. Now I've spoken Arabic, all my childhood life. I'm rusty, so I got to brush up on that stuff and see if I can put it together. And I promised I had to make the potential guest a promise to me that he will take it easy on me.
But yeah, the beautiful thing with that is the technology. Even if even what's being enunciated in another language, you can get it translated even if it's a scrolling script underneath. So you might have to tweak it a bit, but the opportunities are there, so you can make it a universal communication. Because the one thing I realized from working inside the hospital, it does not matter where you're from. The pain points are still the same pain points. You know, the what was it? There was a husband that was talking to me. He says, "Oh, I need a shelf here." Because it was an apartment hotel. I need a shelf here. And looking at it, well, why would you want a shelf there? Because the wife would like it there. And I'm going, you know what? I totally understand where you're coming from. Okay. And the only thing I'm doing there is just to make sure he understands, the restrictions or constrictions in this case. For me, it was none. There are no issues. We want 20 shelves here. I'll put 20 shelves here for you. But your fridge might not open full swing, right? So heads up on that, right? So just as long as you're happy and you understand what you're doing, we'll go for it, right? And it's reversible, so it's not a permanent change. That said, that particular instance, that gentleman's from Southeast Asia, right? But again, same deal, right? It's just we all operate in the same way. We may not speak the same language, we may not look the same, right? Ethnicity wise, but yeah, still the same stuff under the hood.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Now let's move to a little bit to the networking group that you invited me to last week. Which thank you for that, by the way. I really appreciate it. And I enjoyed the group that you had. Very well
You're welcome.
diversified group, and everybody comes from different types of businesses, and they're all seems to have like the common denominator is promoting their businesses or seeking to fix something or to help somebody. But that's great. I mean, you don't have to, take your time, go to a networking event. You can pull people from different backgrounds or different geographical location into a virtual call and get them to share a little bit about what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it. So, how did this idea came about? Is that like a supporting element to Knack for Business, or is it standalone, or is it part of the umbrella of the Creative Insight?
So what's happened is the East Trade wins. I'm going to give you a bit of a backstory. So I was involved in another networking space. East Trade Winds was a chapter in on Ontario. Since then, we've kind of evolved it. A lot of the guests that I'm pulling in that are guest speakers, or sometimes already have been on a podcast. All right, so they're already, everybody is keyed up to want to speak again. They're promoting their message to a different audience, which is great, and they have something of value to share. The East Trade Winds is connected to Canada Growth Network, which is it has a paid for side element to it as well as a free. Like we're doing a power hour later on today at 1 p.m. Robin, you're more than welcome to attend.
Appreciate it.
And
Thanks for the invite.
we're talking about Black Fridays and prepping as a business. So that whole particular space is even more focused on specific elements. Where we'll do a series. Right now, it's Black Friday before the Black Friday sales. We'll probably do a post analysis, and then we'll focus next either on getting your year ready for come January, if depending on when your year end is. Talk about getting stuff ready and or for the tax man or tax woman or tax person, as the case might be. So that's another group. CanadaGrowthNetwork.com is that space.
You know what I really was impressed with the East Trade when the networking event. It was everybody stayed on key in terms of their messaging, and it was not sort of like a pitch fest. To be honest with you, it was people pitching their stuff, but it was very controlled, and people didn't go on. How do you control that?
Well, the the first part, the person that's coming in to give the presentation, we try to key them up. We have like three questions that we push out, and one of the questions has to do with the topic about the speaker. And so it's not on a direct question like, do you pay attention? Do you Google, as opposed to do you post for other people? Do you it's an indirect question that gets you kind of thinking and kind of your head revolving in that space. Then there's one question in there's more about you, a lighthearted question like do you like pink flamingos versus blue ones? It doesn't have to be that. It can be a conversation. Do you like ice cream or do you like peanut butter? Something banal, but it's still kind of humorous, but it evokes a little bit of a conversation piece. If they have something they want to offer, if they have something they want to promote, I tell them, send it to me and I'll push it in. Because what I do is between each person, I'll post a little bit of content, what's going on out there. Right. And so, that promotion already happens. It's like, it's kind of an air break between people. Right. And so person talks, here's a quick promo, person talks, here's a promo, etc. But the questions are already part of that. So there's kind of a rhythm and flow that evolved over since when we started. And I believe it's September 22. We started doing the East Trade Winds, thereabouts. It just kind of had a good fit, had good resonance with people, and they enjoyed the conversation. And then people, if you see somebody inside the space going, "Oh, you two should meet," you'd probably have a good conversation. And
Yep.
we've had that same thing when we were in that call, and going, you three people should meet. I'm just saying it, and then if it works for you, awesome. If not, no harm, no foul.
It's a facilitation. So, in all of your how many years you've been doing this, so you've probably seen many things. So, I've got one question for you around if somebody is trying to tell their story on your network or on your podcast. In your opinion, what checks out as a very sharp founder story? So, what are you looking for in terms of elements to make that story stand out?
One of the key elements I've seen people express throughout all the podcasts, different spaces, is the authenticity. So it's like, listen, I started out here and I didn't like this, so I shifted over here. So it's no one's ever 100% right. No one's ever 100% non. If you can't be fallible, then there's something wrong and you're not telling the story.
Yeah, you're not human. We're all
Well,
human.
yeah, it's not real. It's like no one's 100% perfect, and sometimes in that imperfection is where you find your opportunity, right? And where you find that next bridge. And you can hear that in some people. I've had some guests that have talked, and they didn't stop to breathe, but the story was that good. I've had one guy come talk about taxes, and he says, "Oh, taxes are very boring." But then he started his conversation, right? So he's got the art of a storyteller in there. That helps. But then again, Wayne and I, when we're doing the co-hosting, part of our job is, first off, to help the person relax. So you have that conversation, so kind of just ease them into it, so there's a rhythm. And then we're recording, and then I later on I'll edit out the lead in stuff, and then until we get to the story, and then we'll go back and forth. And there's some people they get a little rigid, and sometimes the best part is after the stop record button's been hit. Then all of a sudden they spill out a whole bunch of things, and we're sitting there going, that would have been handier earlier. But it is what it is when it is where it is, right? Some people do it really well. Some people are they're a little bit rigid, but that's first try. That's okay. So what do I look for? Is just be relaxed and just tell the story. If you're going to do a bit of prep ahead of time, like they're kind of key points. We offer a script that comes out, but if there's a flow, the script is just to give us kind of a bit of a framework so we don't end up in talking about oranges when we have it has nothing to do with oranges, right? Don't go down a rabbit hole too far. So it just kind of keeps us within the box, but you just talk and just relax and just it's a good conversation. I've had some people, they go, "I've never done a podcast before." I said, "We've just spent 40 minutes talking, and it was a good
It would have recorded.
conversation." If I hit record button, it would have been done.
Yeah. So, in your opinion, now with all the automation that's going on out there, do you automate any of your? By the way, I want to thank you for the way you prep your audience, your guests to the podcast. I received the script. I like the script before you recorded the podcast with me. It was sort of, you're right. It's sort of like guide you through this, the process, and for people who are maybe done it or not did it before. I've seen people stressing out to come to my show, and I'm sure you've had people stressing out coming to your show. So like calm them down a little bit. Just a conversation between two individuals having a coffee at whatever coffee shop. Just play that in your head, and it will be okay. But in your opinion, like the post recording, I think when I first started my journey in the podcast, I found post recording it was so taxing. Like I had to spend. I'm doing everything like a one man show, right? I don't have anybody helping me till today, and I feel like I have to do everything from scratch. The editing, the notes, take, and I put a blog post of each one of them. You probably do the same. I think you do the same of each one of those podcasts that I record. I put it on a podcast site, and it used to cost me like almost a week of part time work trying to edit one episode. Now, I guess for me, I've learned, and I'm employing a lot of automation, but I'm still in control. I'm still visible in the process, and I still guide the process in terms of how the automation is taking place. Do you use any of those tools, or you just manual stuff right now?
So for me, I use an editing software that lets me edit the video and audio at the same time. So I'll take the raw footage and dump it into the software called the script, and then I go, okay, from this part to this part, the lead in, I'll shave off because I'll have content that'll come out on top of it. It's going to be cookie cutter content, and tail end too, cookie cutter content. Then I look at the center mass, and then I start going for the things I don't want in there. Like if I have too much of an air gap, right? Start reducing that. Then I look for what you call filler words and or uh, other anomalies. So I look to peel that out. And if whatever I'm peeling out is going, oh, I should have kept that. Well, it's still there. I can always reverse it because if it doesn't sound, and I listen to the podcast again. And from there, I'll get show notes that come from it. The other kind of key thing I do is when I'm in this particular platform, I'll take the cleaned up script and I'll save that. Then I go over to AI and I already have a script set up going, you are this, and here are the details about the person I'm talking to. Here is the cleaned up script, and here is kind of the show notes. Now prep my podcast notes for the podcast on Simplecast in this case. It could have been Buzzsprout too, it doesn't matter. And I'm going, here are the parameters. Okay, thump. Okay, now I also take the same podcast and I push it on YouTube. And okay, rewrite my notes for YouTube, and then Instagram and Facebook. So I'll always have notes prepped so I can always push it out. And then a couple other places where I'll post content information. That's an evolution from season one, what I wasn't doing, and season two I wasn't doing. Season three was, is always kind of adding on a bit more. So I'm looking what I can kind of shape as a result. I let the person, and then I also create an audiogram file, which is the other thing I improved on from season two. And what that is kind of a little ad. The person's got a sound bite. And so I've got a little bit of a chance to offer this is what the person's talking about. Also, the other element I do is target up what makes a person want to listen to the podcast. Well, I state what the problem's being solved. So if it's about buying baby carriages and you're not in that market, well, then you're not going to listen to the podcast. But if you are, there you go, right? You're off to the races. Yeah. So if you figure that's what you need.
No.
Yes. So I try to structure. So I try to. Yeah, oh, that's all right. I try to structure it so that the audience, what appeals, and draws them in, and that way they can digest the content. Is a continuous evolution of improvements? Absolutely. So I got to be mindful of, as I add one more wafer thin to it. At a certain point in time, like like a wedge. You don't want to add too much. You have to start compressing, either give something up or reshape it. Even the content right now, I'm posting 4 to 5 podcasts a week. So that means 4 or 5 times a week I'm editing, which means now I'm looking
Full-time
at going,
job,
okay.
Bernie.
So what I'm looking, but at a certain point you get really good at things, and you go, okay, bang, 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 and you're done. So now I'm looking at what can I do and how can I push out information more effectively? Because if I'm pushing out per day, do I do a sum check at the end of the week of here are the people that are posted, and post some of the information in one place, and then just kind of encapsulate or end result. I'm going to stop talking, otherwise I can keep going for the next 20 minutes.
No, I really appreciate what you're doing, what you're explaining to the people, because many people now are using podcasts as a strategy. But I don't know, it's this whole old dilemma between driving downloads versus driving pipeline. A lot of people, like in my case, I did not create the podcast to drive downloads. I created to drive business opportunities, and downloads was an afterthought. Even now, like I'm not even, if somebody, if downloads happen, I'm not going to go cry about it. I'll be very happy. But my ultimate objective, my number one objective is, am I delivering something on a business level that people are appreciating and they're getting value out of it, right? So there is this notion, download versus pipeline, and everybody I talk to now, they're starting a podcast. Good for them, and the more voices, the better. And these tools are, like you mentioned, I mean, these tools are available now. Anybody can learn them. They're not that complicated. But where it becomes really a little complicated is what you're doing. 4 podcasts per week, being consistent, dominate the airwave. It becomes very like, just to book the time to be with the guests 4 times a week. That's a lot of time, because there's a prep work and there's post work that needs to happen. And this is where I think people fall short. Those new podcasters, I see people blip on the radar. They do one or two and they disappear for 6 months, and then they come back and try it again. What has been your experience in terms of consistency and the pipeline drive? Were they related?
So consistency is just a matter of, I ran into a lot of interesting people. I'm going, gee, I want to hear your story. So that was kind of the momentum to start the process. Right now, when most people, when I'm having a chat with them, all right, I'm going, that's an interesting story, I say, hi, you want to do a podcast? Like right now, I'm booking out into, I think, March 2026 or April, thereabouts. I'll book upwards to 4 to 6 people a week for podcasts, much to the chagrin of my co-host sometimes. He goes, "Oh, Bernie, stop." And sometimes a person can't make it. Life happens, right? And which is okay. We can always reschedule. So I have an open block, and later on I'll come across an interesting story, and I'll have a chat with somebody, and just it becomes that. I'll insert it into that time slot that I had booked originally. Maybe not at that time, but there's a slot that I've allotted, and so it becomes, I can put promotional content into that space too, and not just hi, please buy the widget, but here's a widget and this is what the widget does, and if you're interested, cool. If not, that's fine, but understand what's out there. So it helps build that out for utility. The At the end of the day, for the consistency and keep pushing it out, it becomes a routine,
Yeah.
a rhythm. But the rhythm has utility. Are people benefiting from it? Some people are getting some feedback. I know we're getting, both Wayne and I are getting feedback from people that, can I be on your podcast? Yeah,
Mm.
let's have a chat first. So I'm mindful of who's coming into the door. If you're coming in with something that's kind of sketch, and I say sketch as in it's like, I also don't target the politics. I don't target religion, sex, drugs. You can do music, but I'm not looking. I'm not looking to set fire to the world. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to share and have a good conversation. And the podcast itself is not meant to be a interrogation. It's it's
Conversation.
it's it's a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? One of the things that I don't know if you probably noticed it as well is a lot of these stories were hiding under a rock somewhere, and you bring it up to, putting in the front, and, giving it a little bit more light. And I mean by that is just putting them out there so people can find out about them. Otherwise, you tell a few of your friends, people know about you locally, you're not that really visible out there. And digital media, such podcast, allows you to take your story and amplify it a little bit further. Which, if you're in business, that's also helpful. Now, for people who are, and I want to ask you a little bit about how you finance your podcast, because a lot of people, they come up with the idea of starting a podcast. First thing they think about is budget. What do I need to budget for this thing? How much do I expense for it? That kind of thing. So, have you gone through that, or are you just basically organically putting it together?
Organic. That said, I'm mindful. Like it's my time. Do I want to monetize it? Yeah. Am I at the in that window of opportunity? Yeah, because I have that 8,000, 9,000 downloads a week. So that's having a footprint presence. The um, when I say talking about the AdHive location in Ottawa, so they're looking to ramp up some activity in that space. So there might be an opportunity, basically I have the showcase of what I'm doing and what Wayne and I are doing, and we can probably bring it into that space, which will help generate them more coverage, which generates more membership. That might be an opportunity to be happening in the future. That said, what do you got to budget for? Well, you have to budget for a good mic. At Christmas time, when family says, "Well, what do you need?" Well, for example, I got a boom that holds the mic above my head outside of the camera range as opposed to somewhere sitting right here, right? So, young lad asked me, well, what do you want for Christmas, Dad? Well, a nice boom that can hold the frickin' mic. The mic's heavy. And it does, it's perfect. Just it was a good fit. Um, getting a good camera. Once you have a good camera, it's not like you're, it's not like a working a mechanical device. It's up and running as long as you keep your computer up to date, right? And good internet. But I'm operating inside the house as the office, so it's always up and running.
Yeah.
Yeah. So certain things are just kind of convenient, and then if I go to do virtual meetings, I'm using this same camera.
Yeah. Hey, I
Oh,
noticed you also. Sorry, go ahead, Bernie. Go
yeah. No,
ahead.
sorry. One other thing to realize: once you do a recording, even when you have raw footage, you have content. So yeah, here's your podcast. Now you can later on, let's say you're not doing 4 or 5 recordings a week, and maybe you're doing one a week. Well, now you can sit back and you can peel out portions of it and to push up on social media feeds or to even on your website. You can go, hi, here's some content. This is a value to share with people.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you mentioned it earlier in the start, right? So it's like when we talk about marketing podcasts, and you have your marketing strategy. Would you mind talking a little bit about like some of the limitations, or could be not so much limitation, depends on where you are and where you stand on the topic. But podcasts in English and I only have some certain limitations, right? Because I want to assume, I want to 50%, 60% of the people don't speak around the world don't speak English, which could be a market that would probably be interested in the topic, but they have no access to it because of the language barrier. Now, I understand there's texts and there's transcription and a bunch of other things you can do with that. So, have you contemplated, for instance, having your audio or your videos play in a different language?
Not yet. Would I? Absolutely. I think the best way to hone in on this be even the message you're about to deliver to somebody. Say if you're not, my broadcast has a pretty wide base, a small medium business, etc. But if you're looking for someone that, say, someone does widget recovery, and you make the widgets, but you're looking for the widget recovery audience, or the widget service audience, or the widget happiness audience, whatever it is. Well, what language do they speak? And even then, do you do it as an audio, or do you do it as a video, and it becomes an infographic, right? Some things, it depends what you're trying to communicate and what you're trying to, what the end game is. If it's just to say, hi, I'm here, and we have stuff. I mean, I've noticed content being produced overseas, and the person looking at it, it's obviously in a foreign land, foreign from Ottawa, foreign from Ontario, right? And they're just showing, they're just doing hand gesture. Ta-da! See, they show it's all visual with no language, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're speaking Arabic, English, Francais,
Yeah.
Espanol, Deutsch, right? It's a universal. There it is, right?
The IKEA style, right? So when you get the when you get the IKEA manual, there's no words in there. So everybody should understand that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As long as you know what a screwdriver is,
That's
you're all
right.
set.
That's right. So because I did, I used and I just say that anecdotally, I used a tool called HeyGen before. I took like one of my short clips, and I want to see like the effect of this, and I put it in. It trains on your voice, it trains on your gesture, etc., and it comes up with its own video of you, and literally you could not tell the difference if that's not you speaking. It lip syncs and everything. So I did it in Spanish, and it was pretty good. And that's like a year and a half, 2 years ago now. I haven't tried it since then. But there are some tools out there that they really mimic you, and you wouldn't know the difference. You can put it in any language. But what I found about those tools are, for somebody who's starting brand new or hasn't yet monetized and doesn't have the business case for it, they're bloody expensive. So you probably want to use it as a studio moneymaker or something like this. You got to have some revenue coming out of your business before you start dipping your toe into it, like really good. I mean, they have a free version, but you wouldn't probably want to use it. It's like 2-3 minutes maximum. And if you do an hour conversation like you and I were having, it would be costly quite a bit.
I think the other side of this fence is that of what I'm doing now. Now that I've become practiced in the art of doing a podcast, setting it up, structuring it, you do it for somebody else. Even if they wanted to be, the host guests, and I'd sit in the back, and if they wanted to do the production run, there they go. You're off to the races. If it's post production, they want it done to the nth degree, I'll
Mm-hmm.
redirect them to Carl Richards, right? So because that's what he does. So there's always what do you need, and shape it accordingly, right? I mean, to host an event, to facilitate an event, to I'm sure Wayne, you could rent Wayne to be your co-host.
That's
You
right.
know, he'd be there, and the beauty, like, with having a co-host, by the way, what makes it handy is that he has an irascible nature to him, right? He's knowledgeable. He's not knowledgeable in all tech areas, but that's okay. But if your audience isn't, and you're trying to get him up to speed, he's going to come at it that way, right?
Yeah.
Even when we're interviewing somebody where we do have strong knowledge in what the person's talking about, we'll start asking questions, clarifying questions, so the audience can keep up or stay
Yeah,
informed.
I like Wayne, and you two make a good co-hosts together, and you sort of bounce ideas off of each other in the conversation. So it's a good fit between you and Wayne. To be honest with you, it's very hard nowadays to find a co-host that you actually click with them, and you don't want to come on the opposite end of the. Some people do it on purpose, but for what you're doing, for the business type of conversation, you're not doing it for any political reasons. Like I see political podcasters, they have like left and right, and they're beating each other up, and the guest is sort of confused. But in business, you probably need to have that chemistry between you and the co-host, so the conversation can continue moving forward in a positive way,
Yeah,
and that's very important.
it is. Well, it keeps harmony, but also and again, much like when I'm doing the East Trade Winds, I do that injection of an ad, or a notification of something happening. It breaks it up. It's so it doesn't become all like one monotone sound. Hi, my name is. Hi, my name is. Hi, my name is. Hi, my is not a name.
That's right. That's right. It's very interesting. It's very interesting the way you guys have set it up, and I really enjoyed the conversation that I had with you guys when we recorded the podcast. It was pretty good,
Thank you.
and I highly encourage everybody who is a small business or an inventor, or you're putting a company together, or you have a new product or service, or you have anything that you want to tell the world about, anything is a pretty broad statement. Well, there's guardrails around that statement. Bernie will tell you what that is. There are a few items that Bernie and his team will not touch, and that's not the purpose of the everything statement here. Keeping it within the business domain. So yeah, reach out to Bernie, reach out to Wayne, and talk to them and see if they can help you out. They're looking for good stories to tell on their podcast, and you may be one of those good stories to be told on their podcast as well. Now, so from what you're trying to do, overall, what do you think you are right now? Have you met your goals?
Uh, well, here we go. So first off, to reach us, if you go to the NAC, like knock, except A, the number 4, business.com, you'll get to the website. There's a chat bot on the bottom right-hand side. So goals, this is where I'm going with the goals. What I'm doing now is I'm uploading season 3, and I'm in the process of doing it. So not all the content is there. You can actually research out who's been a podcast guest, right? So the point I'm making here is we're always adding a little bit more, adding a little wafer thin moment into this, but makes the information researchable, who we've talked to. So, if you type in Robin Ayoub, well, there you go. You should be able to find them in season 3. And I think I've maybe already populated you in there. So if you go to do that, it'll work, right? But it'll pop up. It'll pop up the link, right? So have we achieved the goals? No. Wayne says, we'll take over the world, Pinky. I don't necessarily want to take over the world. I think I already have enough fun as it is. I don't want the whole world. But that said, we're looking to generate interest and growth, right? And sustainable growth.
Yeah, and we're on the east. Is that East Trade Wind? Is that open for anybody, or by invite? How does that
East
work?
Trade Winds. You can find it on LinkedIn. East Trade Winds. You'll see the posting for the next calendar event that comes up. It's basically a Zoom. You can register once and then embed it inside your calendar. If you show up one week and don't show up for 3 and show up for the 4th week, totally fine. If you show up every week, it's fine. Yeah, we'll even put you on a mailing list, and you'll get one email on Friday that says, "Hey, this is who's talking next Tuesday. Here's some of the promo material." And then on Monday, one more email comes out and says, "You know what? Tomorrow's Tuesday."
Tomorrow's Tuesday. We're reminding you that.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
So thank you so much for being part of the show, Bernie. We're coming to a close here, and I really appreciate your time with me today. Any last comments for our listeners that you'd like to part us with?
Well, Robin, first off, let me extend on behalf of Wayne and myself, thank you for having us. Thank you for being a guest twice. You're an awesome guest, and you have an awesome story. So, and there's some stories that stick, right? And yours stuck in the noodle here. So thank you. That's much appreciated. If you're in the podcasting space, just have a bit of fun. You'll structure it and know that iteration 1, iteration 2 to iteration 3 it'll migrate over time. You'll tweak it to suit your needs, both for your guests and yourself, and what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve. That'll change. And I was thinking it is a better version. The car we're buying this year won't be the same car we're buying 5 years from now, right? There's a better version of it up there, regardless whether it's hybrid, gas, electric, or powered by hydrogen, or I don't know, Twinkies. Who knows?
Yes, that's right. So yeah, thank you very much, Bernie, for being part of the conversation today. I really appreciate it. And for the audience, I want to thank you so much for joining in and listening in to this podcast and to this watching the YouTube videos. I really appreciate your comments. I do appreciate your recommendations and your likes and shares. Again, we miss Wayne. Wayne's supposed to be part of this conversation. Tell him we miss him, and we'll hopefully catch up with you two next time. Hopefully, we'll get both of you in the next episode that we do, and we'll invite you both back. It's always a pleasure talking to like-minded individual, Bernie. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Robin, same here. It was great. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. And we'll see you at the next episode, everybody.